Hello and welcome to Big Weekend here on the Football365 show, brought to you by Paddy Power. This is another packed show, I promise you that. Lots to talk about. I want to talk about Liverpool. We seem to do it every week, but Liverpool have got to be talked about. Great result last week against Arsenal. Really poor midweek against Real Madrid. Plus other stuff. Spurs against United, Palace, Chelsea, West Ham, Leicester, Burnley, Newcastle, all coming up in this episode of Big Weekend. I'm Mark Smith. I'm here as ever with Sarah Winterburn. This is Big Weekend brought to you by Paddy Power. Right, Sarah, let's start off. Liverpool versus Villa. It's been a very up and down week for Liverpool. We saw what we thought were, maybe a beacon of light in that Arsenal game, and it all came crashing down again away at Real Madrid. Well, how do you see this one going at home to Villa?
This is a great one, isn't it? Because Liverpool are at home, and now we've gone from this ridiculous situation where you think Liverpool at home is a banker, to being Liverpool at home, you start worrying about them, far more than you would away from home, bizarrely. So that performance at Arsenal was good. We said last week, I expected Liverpool to win that game. I expected Liverpool to be more motivated for that game. And, they are a better side than Arsenal. Now, in theory, they're a better side than Aston Villa as well. But this is happening at Liverpool, and it's also happening after that midweek game, which really was appalling.
Disappointing.
Think of a different word to describe it, but that first half in particular was absolutely ludicrously bad. Front to back, the manager made mistakes. I think the lineup was a mistake, and then they made defensive errors, and then also up front they couldn't make the ball stick. They're going to have to be better against Aston Villa.
Yep.
Now Villa have hit a little bit of a better run of form. They played well without Jack Grealish last week. We still don't know whether he'll be back. But, these are, if you look on paper, at least on the league table, these are two really close teams. There isn't a great deal between them. And Villa will have spent all week working out how to get to that Liverpool team. And they've had a massive hint on Tuesday. All you've got to do is I'm saying all you've got to do is if everyone's got a Tony Kroos on their side. Of course they haven't. But that long ball behind the fullbacks, because of that lack of pace in the centre of defence and the lack of defensive nous that Trent Alexander-Arnold's got, that's your route, isn't it? Just head for that
wide
space
open
between Phillips and Alexander-Arnold, and you will get joy. Now, whether Villa, Douglas Luiz is probably that player. John McGinn can do that as well, to pick out that pass, and that's got to be their route to go long, but long and controlled. Yeah.
It's wide open, this one. It's not going to be a 7-2. I feel confident about that. There's no revenge game here. I am going to go for Jota any time. I do feel like since he's come back in from injury, they look a little bit more precise going forward. A little bit. There's that element of anything can happen again, which they didn't really have with Firmino for the last few months. So Jota any time for me as part of my Paddy Power 4-way accumulator. Right, let's move on. Palace versus Chelsea. Now Chelsea last time out was it was a bloodbath, wasn't it, Sarah? Can we expect the same thing this time round?
I don't think so. I mean, I'm not sure Palace can inflict a bloodbath for a start. Maybe you wouldn't have thought
we didn't think West Brom could.
Either. But I think this is the kind of result that only happens once under a manager like that. I don't know whether it's complacency. I imagine quite a lot of it was that it was almost like going and getting this game done before the Porto game in midweek. And it was one of those games where nobody even watched it because you just thought, well, that'll be a stroll in the park. Who wants to see a 3-0 win from Chelsea? It was so unexpected, but I think it's the sort of thing that's only going to happen once under that kind of manager who has got that defensive sort of organisation at the heart of what he does. And I don't think this will happen again. They will have had an absolute bollocking after that, and absolutely certain they should have done. That was an Arsenal-esque sort of collapse, wasn't it? Like just kind of losing all sense of where they are and making mistake after mistake after mistake. Obviously, Thiago Silva's sending off didn't help, but even after that, you kind of thought that they'd do enough to at least get a draw, but to get absolutely battered by West Brom is unimaginable. I don't think that's going to happen again. I think we'll see a better Chelsea.
Yeah, I think you're right. I don't always agree with you, Sarah, but on this occasion, 100%, I'm going to go for both teams to score no here. I think that will have really shocked Tuchel. That result.
With a punchline then of
no. I think that result will really, really have scared Tuchel, and I think we're going to see them clam up a little bit. Not as they're not really expansive with him anyway going forward, but certainly they're going to tighten up at the back, I think. And Palace were pretty good against Everton. I thought it was a decent point for them. But yeah, I just fancy a Chelsea win and a clean sheet. This is a hunch. I'm normally wrong. Don't listen to me. Right, let's move on. This is probably the biggest game of the weekend. It's Spurs against United. I mean, is it going to be a Jose masterclass against one of his old clubs, or can we expect just sort of more of the turgid same we've seen in the last few weeks?
I don't know. Obviously, this was the game, wasn't it, that gave us the wrong idea about this season earlier on. That Man United were going to be very, very poor this season, and Spurs were going to somehow be this free scoring team. Now, is that you talked about revenge earlier on with the Aston Villa Liverpool? I think this has got revenge written all over.
It's the same round of fixtures, isn't it?
I think this is Man United sort of looking at that and thinking, do you know what? This is the great wrong that's been done to us this season. This is, that's the only. But it was the fixture that made them sort of put the handbrake on in these games. So it's really interesting to know whether they'll keep that handbrake on for this game, because I do think Man United could batter Tottenham. I really do, and they've got those goals in them, definitely. Now, whether Solskjaer allows them to do that, whether he takes the handbrake off a little bit and lets them kind of go at them in full flow, I'm not quite sure. This Spurs side is so fragile, isn't it? I mean, it's bizarre that they still have a chance of the top four, because they don't look anything like that kind of class. They're very fragile. Again, we saw it against Newcastle, the same old thing of kind of getting in front and then falling behind and sort of inviting on an onslaught. If they invite on an onslaught against Man United, that is going to end very badly for them, I think.
Yeah, I think the one thing here that is in Spurs' favour is that United have got Granada in the Europa League sandwiching this game. And I just wonder if, they've got a few injuries, maybe they rest a couple of players for this one, knowing that they are 11 points clear of fifth place and the top four is all they can really hope for. So I think with that in mind, I don't think United are going to really be going for it, playing the high intensity we've seen in the last couple of months. And for that reason, I'm going to go for a draw in this one as part of my four-way accumulator. Right, West Ham versus Leicester. West Ham aren't supposed to be here still. What has happened? How have they done this? Without Declan Rice, they still go off to Wolves, a tough place to go, and they win. And they look great. They look so great.
And they look very un-Moyes-like, didn't they?
Yeah.
As well, 3-2 win is not really your sort of David Moyes scoreline, is it? And a great game, like proper end-to-end stuff. And maybe Declan Rice not being there kind of forced that a little bit. That it did become a little bit more open. They didn't, we talked again last week about if West Ham, they can win those games. They are better than those teams in that mid-table section, especially now with Jesse Lingard, who gives them a completely different dimension. And we talked about him before, but what a signing! Definitely the signing of January, and one of the signings of the season by a mile, I think. There's no shame in not being quite good enough for Man United, and he's very much good enough for West Ham, and I think it's working absolutely brilliantly. This is another game where they just bang out 3 points against these teams that are below them in the league. Then it kind of doesn't matter that they can't seem to pull it out against the bigger teams. That sort of inferiority complex kind of stops them kind of going toe to toe with Man United. But this is the kind of game where notch off another 3 points, and you're starting to think, wait a minute, can this actually happen?
Yeah, but come on. I mean, Leicester. I mean, I feel like you're overlooking Leicester there. They're a serious outfit, and they've got some real steel this season. I think if West Ham, listen, I'm going to say this: if West Ham win this game, I would put a cheeky little wager on them getting top four and actually doing it, because I think Leicester have shown that they've got some real fortitude, some real quality, a great spine in that team. Yeah, I don't think we can write them off. I think any sort of positive result is great here for West Ham, be it a draw or whatever. I'm going to go. You mentioned Lingard there. I've got to go Lingard anytime. He's just been astounding. And yeah, you're right. Okay, he couldn't do it at United because Bruno Fernandes is ahead of him. And what do you want from him? But he's been great. Right, the last game we're going to talk about today, Sarah. It's the glamour tie of the weekend. It's Burnley versus Newcastle. You mentioned Newcastle a minute ago after their Spurs
the Jeff
game.
Hendrick derby, as we like to call it.
The Hendrick derby. I mean, it's here. I can't wait for it, right?
It's all nailed on, isn't it? Newcastle, they were a different side at the weekend. Yeah, it wasn't a point that really did them a lot of service, but they created chances.
They were good.
A lot of chances, and going forward, that is how they get out of this. They're not defensively sound, which is kind of not really the way that you expect Steve Bruce to try and play. But if he tries to play the way that Steve Bruce wants to play, they could go down. But if he trusts the fact that Alan Saint-Maximin, Callum Wilson when he comes back, Ryan Fraser, these are good attacking players, and they're all attacking players that would fit in most sort of mid-table sides quite comfortably. So that's where their power is, isn't it? And they could, they're a better team than Burnley going forward. Now, whether that whether that actually comes to pass because Burnley is so much better defensively than Newcastle. I think this might actually be far more intriguing than you think it will, as long as Steve Bruce lets it happen, if you know what I mean. I think if he just lets them play, I think Newcastle are a better side than Burnley. But if he tries to sort of out-tactic Sean Dyche in some way, then it ain't going to work.
He can come unstuck, can't he? I agree with you. I don't understand managers that play defensive football when they haven't got a defence you can rely on. Just go and let them play their game. There's some really good attacking players there. Yes, they've missed Wilson. Yes, Sam Maximin's only just coming back. But you can't defend against... You can't just sit back and defend against Burnley when Chris Wood is back. And Chris Wood, I think, is an excellent Premier League striker. He always makes good partnerships with whoever he's playing against. At the minute, it's Vidra. They look good together. You know, I've not got a bet for this one, but I think it actually will be quite an entertaining game. Right, Sarah, that's all we've got time for this week on Big Weekend. Thank you for joining me. Thank you guys at home for watching. We'll be here same time, same place next week. If you want to get in touch with the show, you can email us. It's theeditor@football365.com. Right, until then, this has been Big Weekend, brought to you by Paddy Power.